Maryanne, welcome to Nonprofit Live.
Hello.
So good to see you. I cannot wait to dig in and dish
Ah.
on everything mindset and fundraising and nonprofit magic because I just love being in your energy, Maryanne. I'm so
Oh,
glad you're
thank you
here.
so much. That means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, we had a blast just a couple weeks ago at your summit, the Donor
Attraction
Attraction
Forum. That was
Forum.
in January. That was
Oh my God.
2 months ago.
Hey, St. Patrick's Day.
I know. I know.
2 months ago. Oh my gosh. Well, listen, it's been a while, couple months. We're rounding out quarter 3, so I thought this was the perfect time to have you come in. But we're gonna talk through some of these issues, where folks are at with their goals. First, we want to know, welcome everybody to Nonprofit Live, and we host and have other interviews like this over in the Facebook group, the Big Hearted Nonprofit Society. So check us out there, and we'll be adding the link. That is our Facebook group. And today we're excited to welcome Maryanne. And Maryanne, let's just jump in. First, we want to make sure we can be seen and heard. So drop us a comment that you can see and hear us. I have us pulled up here. We'll be monitoring questions. So please jump in and start, because one thing I felt in when I was in the forum, when I was part of the summit that we did back in January, your Donor Attraction Forum, it was just such a great lineup of speakers and energy that I felt like people left with not only the tools to do things differently, but the confidence. But the
Yeah.
confidence.
Yeah. That's such a big thing for me. I mean, I've been doing this for a really long time, right? And that was such a big thing for me, was understanding that there's strategy and then there's mindset, and they all work together.
Mm.
And what I see in my experience, what I see is a lot of people wanting to use strategy to really solve mindset issues. So if I had a script, I would feel more confident, right? Like if I had a brochure to share, when really the confidence comes from inside, right? And then when we grow that and we tap into that confidence, that leader inside us, then the script or the brochure can really work. Right. So I would, what I mean? I kind of flipped the script, so to speak, on what that looks like.
Yeah, because your company. So let's back up a little bit. Your company is Courageous Communications, which
Yeah.
is such a great title, because I
Thank
do
you.
think it's courage. I do think saying the hard stuff is what really
Hmm.
builds community, and that takes courage. So how do you help a client? Where are you located, and what is Courageous Communications, the business, all about?
Right. So I'm in St. Louis, Missouri. And so Courageous Communication was really based on my experience working for many, many years in and for nonprofits on marketing and messaging. And what I learned from that experience is that if you can't communicate effectively internally, you won't be able to communicate effectively externally. And so why would some organizations like really embrace a message and really stand in their value and create all of this like energy of attraction, and other organizations, even if the messaging was good, the brand was good, it just didn't connect, and it was about the internal. So if you want to communicate effectively internally, how do you do that? Well, that is that each individual learns to be a better leader to themselves and a more authentic communicator. Right.
Mhm.
And then once you have that, because it's all about authenticity. It's all about authenticity. The more authentic you can be as a person, as an organization, the more attractive you are to people. And that's what we really work on, is what does it mean for you to be authentic? What does that look like? And really stepping into that higher level of yourself. And that's what I work with. I kind of work in, well, I work in sort of two ways, but I coach and train individuals all over the country in my influence course. So we
Mhm.
create this like really wonderful sacred container. My last round ends today.
Mhm.
And so we take and we work on all of this stuff, like how do we instill better leadership? How do we have the hard conversations? How do we find the confidence within us? Not faking it, but like actually finding it inside us, that authenticness. How do we live a more aligned, authentic life so that we can show up more powerfully? And then from there, I work with organizations at a higher level, applying some of these tools into like in their leadership and into their culture. But that's what I saw was kind of missing in the marketplace, you know?
Yeah, I think it still is. I mean, I think you're holding on to kind of a rare combination of pieces. There's a lot of people out there talking about marketing and messaging and copywriting, right? There's a lot of people talking about the strategic building, but it's the authenticity piece, I think, that really is got to go deeper than our usual conversation around something that really infuriates me, Maryanne, which is our obsession around thank you notes. Like, listen, I love thank you notes. They're so important. Am I right?
Yeah,
But
they
if you,
are.
they are. But if you think that's why people are investing in your mission, I think you're selling yourself short. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's that confidence. The thank you note is just one tactic in that overall relationship building strategy. And we know this, to build real relationships, it takes authenticity. It takes vulnerability,
I was just
right?
thinking that vulnerability, the most vulnerable person in the room is the most powerful person in the room. And
Mm,
and we tend to keep it close, and because we fear, the two things that we fear the most are guilt and shame.
mm,
And so to protect ourselves from that low vibe feeling, we're like, well, I couldn't say that. What if they didn't like my idea? Or what if they thought I was needy, or, you know, you know, um, or overly emotional, or angry. Like women get that. I don't want to look angry,
mm.
and so we hold everything back, and that's then, like you're saying, Amy, like, there's a lot that gets left unsaid, and then decisions get made um without the full expression of what's happening, and then they get sabotaged on the way down because people don't like what's going on, but they don't know how to say it. And so leaders who permit authenticity and permit vulnerability, who create cultures of like what I call the sacred container, that it's okay to say what you think, right? It's okay to make a mistake, like those cultures, then they get so much more done because they're allowed to actually talk about what's happening.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like have the true dialogue about what's happening. And when, like one time somebody said to me, I was coaching him. He was a consultant working with this organization. He said, I was hoping to avoid the drama. And I was like, but what if the drama has a purpose? What if the drama isn't something we want to get around, it's something we walk into? Because what drama means is people get to be fully self-expressed. And if I can manage but I don't want to hear that sometimes, because whatever they're yelling at, that's going to trigger my stuff. So I want to keep them calm because right, like, and so it's all of us just keeping it down, down, down. So if I understand that and can lead them through that, and then what happens is it's like what I call coming up for clearing, like that drama, like people get allowed to say the frustration, they get allowed to speak their truth, and then guess what? It goes away. And that's exactly what happened in this situation,
You
right?
move through it,
You
right?
move
You
through
don't
it.
move
Yes.
around it. You don't
Right.
waste
Because,
energy
oh, that's,
avoiding it.
conflict is bad. Drama is bad. No, that conflict, peace and conflict are a balance, right? Like, and I work on this, Amy, I work on this every single day of my
Mm.
life. Every single day I work on like allowing conflict in my life. Because it's hard. It's hard for me. I want to say it's hard for
Listen,
me. But
community is hard. Being
yeah,
in relationship takes work. It doesn't happen by accident. It takes, I think I hear you saying, it takes intention, right?
it
It
takes
takes,
intention. It takes an awareness of like, okay, when that person, like, okay, what am I afraid of? What are they going to say? That's good. Like, and then understanding that and being able to work through that in yourself, you know, then you can like witness them and listen to them so they can speak their truth without it like jumping onto you, and you internalizing all of that. Right. And that's like, and one of the things I really work on, because you're talking about confidence, it's not like, oh, I'm going to act confident. It's like, no, 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 that doesn't work, because energy speaks louder than words. So you can't fake it.
no,
Right. Like
no.
80% of
It's
communication
like
is
talking to
unspoken.
teenagers.
Yeah. No.
They're not buying it. They're
Dude,
just not gonna
girl,
buy it.
my 17-year-old, it like I cannot lie to him. I
Nope,
cannot tell a half truth to
not
him.
gonna
He
buy it.
calls it, and he calls it out every single time.
Yep.
His BS meter is so finely tuned. And
Think of your audience as teenagers. They're
yeah,
not buying the BS, so
right.
you might as well skip
And
it.
if there's a gap between what we say, and the energy in which we say it, people BS meter goes off right away. And so like, and so it's not about faking it. It's about, okay, if my story is I'm not confident, then this is actually what I work with people on. Okay, the story I'm telling is I'm not confident. Well, what if I just shifted my language a little bit and said, sometimes I'm not confident, or there's parts of me that aren't confident, or I'm working on gaining confidence. And then because I know that there's a part of you that is confident, and I bet if we looked at your life and said, where are all the times that you were confident, right? That you showed up big and strong, like, I bet. And then so it's like, oh, because that piece is, all I'm saying is that part is in you. So it's just tapping into that part of you, bringing that part forward and saying, okay, where can I find that confidence within me, the true confidence, and then come with that. And because we are what we are in essence is a product of the stories we tell about ourselves. So if you say you're not confident, you're not going to be confident. If you say I'm not good with asking for money, you're not going to be good asking for money. That's just it.
And it reminds me of this notion that confused people don't buy, but confused people don't sell either. They don't fundraise well either, right? So that confidence comes from tapping into that personal strength, but also, as you said earlier, having the hard conversations, cleaning up the stuff that needs to get cleaned up, being transparent with the things that are working and that aren't, because you and your team have come to acknowledge them and you're working on them.
Yes.
And I think confidence also comes with whatever you're not feeling psyched about or proud about, let's dig in there and clean it up.
Exactly. Right. And the coolest thing is, in cleaning up and, doing all of this, it's like, you don't have to fix anything. You don't have to solve anything. You don't have to change anything. And in fact, that's the thing that people feel like they need to do. Like the donor has a question, I need to have that answer right away. The donor has a problem, I need to fix it right away. No, what I need to do is listen to the problem and receive the problem, and not because if Amy, you're like, oh, I didn't like the way that went. You're like, oh, I thought it went. Oh, like, so your board would say, I really didn't feel like we connected that well. And you would say, oh, I thought you guys connected great. Okay. Is that person like, oh,
do they feel heard?
Right. Yeah. No, right. Like, well, okay, well, you did. Like, okay, well, oh my, well, that's, I'm, wow. Like, what makes you say that? That's a really interesting comment. I'd love to hear more about how you felt about that. Then they get to go into that and you can learn from that. But the reason we deflect is because like, it's like our subconscious, our brain gets protective of us. This could trigger a bad feeling in me, so I better shoot this down right now. Instead of like, so what's going on? Because we really don't have to solve anything. Our main job is just to listen. You're so much more powerful at just listening and validating what people say. And this is so interesting because like, sometimes you do things really well and you didn't do anything to do them really well. And it's it's like a magic trick. And my dogs. So it's like a magic trick, right? And you kind of discount that skill because you didn't try to have it, right? It just has it.
Yes.
But I've always had this skill. At my last job, if something got weird, if something went wrong, whether it was my project or not, it was like, hey, Maryanne, I'll fix it. And I would go in, but I didn't really fix it. I just listened, because it was easier for me to listen because I wasn't probably that deeply involved in what had happened. So I could be a little bit, but even if I was, like, so tell me what's going on. Thank you for bringing this to me, and just really exploring what happened. And then because when people feel seen and heard, it just kind of like, it just loses its charge.
People truly connect. Yeah.
Yeah. And if they don't feel seen and heard, they will keep coming back until they do.
One job description I would love to see added to a typical executive director job description is the responsibility of facilitation. Not the emphasis of the doing, but the emphasis on learning how to become a master facilitator, which involves so much listening. Sometimes I think we feel so much pressure to have the answers. Like you said, it triggers us to say, oh gosh, we're going to get exposed for not knowing something. Listen, when you're growing, there's always things you don't know. And I love your point around by looking at what's working or what you want or need to be talking about. It's not so much the energy of jumping in there and doing things to quickly fix it. It is about the honesty and transparency of we have a plan where we're working through these different things,
Yes.
not a crisis, but a
Right.
strategy.
Right.
And then you can talk about your vulnerabilities, not just as an individual, but as an organization in a way that invites your donors as partners, right?
Yes. Yes. And that is like that. And that's the vulnerability to saying, I don't have all the answers, right? Like, but people expect you more because you're honest with them.
Plus, it's fun figuring out possible scenarios and
It is.
answers,
And I love that thing about, like facilitation, like, because it is around um how to, listen both individually, and facilitation just for me just means group listening, right?
Mhm.
But it's all about how I can set up so that I can listen and receive what people are saying without trying to fix it or solve it. Just like let it land. And the pain comes from the gap between who people are and who we want them to be. I want my board to be better at fundraising. I want my donors, like, and if they do that, then I'll feel better. Like, instead of tapping into who they actually are, not who we want them to be. And
Yeah, that board fundraising one's interesting. And I know I can go honestly here with you. And the crowd, and I'm curious if you're watching what you think about this. Tamara is loving such a great point that it has to start internally. So she really heard you on that. And hey, Greg's here. Greg knows all about change and shifts. He's a health coach and he knows it starts on the inside.
Yeah, Greg, you and I, because people will change their bodies in the battle of the brain over the body. The brain will win every single time, right? Because if you can change your external, but if your internal programming, says something different, then that will always win every single time. And this is not me. This is like, research and science. Like, I just took that and said, okay, whoa, how is this applying into the spaces that I'm in a lot? Where I see people like when COVID hit, okay, when COVID's over, then I'll feel better. Well, then, okay, oh wait, so now, now there's a war. Now, you know what I mean? There's always going to be something. I mean, I've been doing this since 1992. I've been through,
economic recessions,
recession. We've been
United Way, you like all kinds of drama, right?
all drama,
all kinds of
every kind of
and
every political, different political everything. And so the only constant is me. And so when I show up, like, okay, and what I saw, the organizations that were really doing well during COVID were the ones who were like, listen, we're not waiting. We're going to do what we need to do, because we're going to instill our own sense of peace and safety. Not that it's not hard. I'm not saying it's not hard, but like, and also
it's hard either way, folks.
right. And I can hold space for COVID is difficult, and I can hold space for that. I'm still the supreme creator of my experiences. So how can I embrace this? What if I chose COVID? Like, this will blow your mind. So like, what if I chose this? Like, what if I chose to be home every day? How could I choose this in my life? Like, okay, how could I actually use this to my benefit? And looking at, like, if a nonprofit said, what if we chose not to have any fundraisers for the next 2 years? How could we, well, because I think events are so, I won't even go there, but like, what if we chose this instead of, because the more we resist, the more it's there. So if you embrace it, then you can, like, what if this is happening for me, for our benefit? Okay, if I look at that, everything's happening for me, for my benefit, I can get a lot out of any situation, even the difficult ones, because we have an assumption, I think, an underlying belief that our life should not have problems. Our life should not have conflict.
I see that we're trying to achieve this problem free.
Right. Yeah. And like, oh, no. I'm suffering. This is so horrible. Well, yeah, like, right. How are we going to know peace if we don't have conflict? How are we going to know joy if we don't have pain? Like, that is all just part of the human experience. So if we look, like, challenging times are a part of life, and we just roll into that, then it changes our framework a little bit, a lot.
Yeah, and Greg's agreeing. He's saying there will always be something. It's
Yeah.
and Greg's coming into the nonprofit collab, my membership community of nonprofit leaders,
Yay.
next month to do some training. Just like what you're saying, Maryanne, it's all connected. It's all connected. Um, I want to talk about this when you decide, when you make the decision, right? Regardless of what's going on around you, um, to own your story, right, and share it in a powerful way to attract donors, to
Mhm.
attract partners. You said something about it's about looking at, and I may not get this exactly right. It's about looking what's working, what needs to be fixed, but it's not about sinking into what I call the do more energy, right? It's more like allowing the receiving of what you said, which is it. Imagine the universe, imagine what's unfolding is really there to help you.
Right.
And if you can receive that, to me, I really use the word receiving because I've spent a lot of years in my life. I'm an expert in community building, right? This
Yes.
is my in digital community building, not marketing, but digital community building. The fact is, I've learned a lot about being in community from failed relationships, from failed community experience, from showing up and being hurt than I ever have in all of the things that have gone well or gone smoothly. Um, and it for me, looking back, I spent a lot of time working way too hard, right? Like kind of resisting the fighting the riptide. And now I realize, you know what, if I just sit back and I really set the intention and I do the work, it's about doing the work, but really believing that your partners are out there, that people want to fund you and see you succeed. And our only
Mhm.
job is to bring those people together.
Yep. Yep.
No
Um,
convincing, right?
yeah, no, so all of this is rooted in abundance, which is, there's enough
Mm,
out there for everyone. And the scarcity mindset permeates nonprofit culture, and it does a lot of damage to the industry as a whole, organizations, individuals, because we live in fear. We don't want to let the donor go that's no longer aligned with our mission because we're afraid we're not going to find another one. We're
mhm,
afraid to have honest conversations with our donors. You know, around maybe some like what we would perceive as difficult subjects, or like around race and maybe LGBT things like that, we because we're afraid that we'll offend them and we'll lose the money.
mhm,
And when authentic aligned action, that means like there's plenty of money for me, and my only job is to attract the right people to me. And if they're not the right person, that's totally okay, because I'm seeing them for who they are, not who I want them to be,
yeah,
which makes life so much easier.
yeah,
And I can release them to make room for what's coming, but it's hard to release because you don't know, when that's coming. And so we tend to hold on to stuff that's not working. You know what I mean? And donors that
yeah.
aren't
I
a
know
good
what you
fit.
mean.
Yeah. And people and, partners and, whatever, like in our life, because we don't want to be without. And the uncertainty, the in between, like, there's an A and there's a B, and then there's the in between, and we want to swim through that in between. And I feel like when you were talking about being busy, that's the doer energy of like, oh, there's uncertainty. I've got to work and work until I can feel certain again. But
Yeah.
that's just really a feeling. The like I'll use this example. We've been talking about the board a lot, but this is just an example. I'll just give you an example of like a doer energy. Okay.
Mhm,
So your board come, because I see this happen a lot. Okay. Wonderful Edie, the board says, hey, if we had if we had a brochure, like something to help us, we say the right thing, we'd be able to help with fundraising.
mhm,
That great idea. Be happy to do that for you. Loving this. And so they go and do. I make a brochure. Here's your brochure. And they're like, great, thanks. And then nothing happens.
mhm,
Right. And so they say, okay, that didn't work. What if you gave us this? And like, what if we had, like social media links and you gave us all this stuff to post? And it still doesn't happen because the presenting problem isn't really the actual problem.
yeah.
So, but if I could just do this instead of saying, okay, Mr. Board Person or Miss Board Person, tell me what you feel like this brochure would do for you. How do you feel like it would serve you? Well, it would make me say the right thing. All right, well, tell me about that. What do you feel like is the right thing to say? What would happen if you said the wrong thing? Because what I'm looking at, because there's the problem they know and admit to, then there's the problem they know and don't admit to, and then there's the problem they know, don't admit to, but you can see. So I could probably see that that person was fearing rejection, but I can't roll in with that. Okay. So, but I can lead them to that, so that's what I mean. Like, I feel like I'm giving you an example of the scenario you described. Like, let's just, instead of like doing, let's just pause and tap into what's really going on. And from that, yes. Okay. And if I can walk them down to, well, yeah, I'm afraid I'm going to mess up. Okay. What happens if you mess up? You know what? Here's the thing. It's okay if you how can I support them in growing their confidence as a fundraiser? And just anybody who is at the donor attraction forum, if you listen to Sonia Sala talk about helping board members break out of their comfort zone a little bit, so together we can find a strategy, right, that's going to address what was actually happening. You know what I'm saying? Instead of like doing. But I also feel like
if you don't take a breath, you can't. Right. I call it ruthlessly prioritizing, because the list will always fill up. But if you don't take a breather to say, what are the top 4 things that are going to get me the biggest result that I can spend my time on? It's a constant process.
It is a constant process. Yeah. And then you wind up getting bogged down in the day-to-day minutia and not really getting into those big things. Hold on just a second. Puppy, what have you got?
Bring him on the show.
This is my foster puppy, Tina.
Yeah, you do. You foster some pups,
Tina,
huh?
did you get a cup? Well, come here. Hi.
Tina's drinking during the day.
This is Tina.
Hey, Tina.
You're okay.
She's a little camera shy. She's sweet. How old? Looks like a pup. Yeah.
This is our foster puppy, Tina.
Hey,
okay.
Tina.
Okay, she's busy.
Listen, we got a lot of foster fans out there. So.
I purposely said, okay, I'll let all the dogs out in place so they won't interrupt me barking.
What are you gonna do? Anyway. Yeah, kids and dogs.
Tina, honey, ow! She's getting in that busy phase. Typically, we get them from about 6 months to about 12 weeks, and she's just hitting about that time where you're like, okay. People are like, is it hard to give them up? I'm like, no.
Not when they get to the busy phase.
Yes. She chewed a new shoe. I'm like, Tina, time.
Tina, you're gonna love your forever home. It's gonna be good.
All right, so.
But it is. It's funny because it reminds me of you bring up an interesting point. This constant quest for certainty, and so you can get into this endless list of things we need to produce, things we need to do. But if you stop and really figure out what problem you're trying to solve, you can help get there. And for me, an example is, I work with people in my programs, and I talk a lot about strategic planning and fundraising. And the fact is, it often isn't either one of those things. It's they need help defining their programs and services, how they convey the quality of those programs and services, how they understand a budget, how they even know how much they're raising money for. It ends up becoming part of having those harder conversations to help nonprofits navigate the changing landscape, because the money is going to always move differently. The opportunities are going to shift based on policies and trends and opportunities. And so by rooting down into a system where you're regularly having courageous and honest conversations is everything to keep you on track.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in my course, and when I work with organizations, I teach them very specific language to use to be able to give and receive feedback in a way that allows it to just flow, right? Where people don't get defensive, where they shut down, because the moment you get defensive, you go into the back of your brain into instinct, right? And once you go in instinct, like if somebody says something to you and you can feel it in your body, your head pounds, or you feel the tears push, or your heart, your stomach, like if you can point to where you're feeling that in your body, that means you've had a biological, neurological reaction to what's being said, which means you've gone back into instinct. And when you get to that part of your brain, your ability to think rationally and absorb new information is extremely limited. right? Because your body's basically gone into survival mode. Like if you told me I'm really upset with you, you know, blah, blah, and if I like, that's like a bear attacking me. Like that's how my brain sees that, you know? So so it's how, if we when we want to keep people open and relaxed and up here the prefrontal cortex, which is up here, so that they can receive new information, right? But so that's why I tell people, like in my work, we don't pitch, we don't convince, we don't sell, we don't push, because the second we do that, people get defensive. When they get defensive, they get protective and they shut down. They're no longer open to what you have to say. But if they feel seen and heard, right, and which is like why we don't dismiss comments or objections. If they feel seen and heard, then they'll be open to what you have to say. So keeping people open, keeping trusting, right, you know, that's the key to then allowing you know, allowing them to receive what you have to say. And also sometimes how you say it. So can I share a little thing with you?
A little trick?
Yeah. So there's wisdom and there's advice. And I'm so sorry because Tina is on a roll right now.
We're good as long as you're. I'm sure it's distracting.
She is
Listen,
just. She has this plastic cup, and it's just the greatest thing that's ever happened to her right now. Okay, so there's wisdom and good advice, and in our culture, in television and movies, like we don't have very good models for empathy, because when you are very empathetic and open, and it doesn't create a lot of like drama, which doesn't create a lot of good TV or movies. So our TV and movies tend to be filled with like miscommunication and like you always do this and you never do that and you should do that, or with a like a lack of empathy. So like, Mom, I'm so scared. Oh, don't be scared, honey.
Yeah,
right. And so there's not a lot of models for this. So advice is like, oh, you know, like, and Rich will like this, you know, like, oh, I'm feeling sad. Oh, you know what I do when I feel sad? I go for a run. You should run. Like, wait, what? You know, when you try to fix it, when you give advice, you stop. It's a conversation killer. So wisdom comes from lived experience, and wisdom is given with permission. And one of my first mentors in my business was an incredibly powerful man who ran many, many businesses. And even in that, anytime he would say he wanted to share something with me, he would say, could I share what I would do if I were you? Would it be okay if it would be okay if I shared what I would do? Like, so first of all, you ask permission. And second of all, it's coming from wisdom. So the phrases that I use is like, could I tell you what I would do if I were you? Right. And the other one is like, you might consider, or I invite you to consider. Those are words like, so what I'm doing is I'm putting some language in front of it that puts the decision on what to do on the listener. So I'm not telling them, because what happens when we tell people what to do? Like, I don't want to do that. You can't tell me what to do. So I say, you know, or I'll say, I'm going to share something with you. If it resonates with you, great. If not, that's okay too. But here's what's coming through for me, or here's just what I'm seeing. You can take that or whatever. So I'm not saying like, this is what went wrong, or here's the problem. From my point of view, here's what I'm seeing. So those are little just like tricks.
Well, you're right, because the fact is we're professionals at this. Like an interior designer would go in to see how to decorate a home. You know, organizationally, we're in hundreds of organizations. You start to see patterns and trends, right? And but it's really not about telling or lighting the path. It's about helping that.
Yes, exactly right. Yes,
that leader or that group.
We're shiplapping this. Let's do that, because that's the trend right now. Instead of like really tapping into who people are and what they really want to see for themselves.
Yeah, I like that, wisdom versus advice. That's
right. And so we speak from wisdom, and advice is books, movies. Wisdom comes from lived experience, right? And so, and it may not be like a direct lived experience, but it could be just a pair, like if I'm going to share, it's from my wisdom. Oh, you know what? I read this, that you should do that, or, you know, and So wisdom, and let me just give you an example. So I did a big workshop a couple weeks ago, and I'll give you this woman, and this was a great idea. And so this woman said, we have this whole list of things that how donors can, how supporters in general can get involved in our organization. It's like this menu, and they can kind of look at it and pick. I'm like, and I could have said, okay, well, but that's too much. I said, that is such a cool idea. And would it be okay if I suggested something to put in front of that? And what I'd like you to put in front of that is, by listening to what they're saying, then you can kind of pick from this menu what would be the best entry point for them.
That's such a key point, is that good fundraising is really about, I've got things to talk about and you're going to listen until I'm done.
Right.
It's about, I've got my basket of things to talk about, and based on their interest, I'm going to lead with different things.
Right.
And we're always saying the same thing.
And also,
we're emphasizing.
Do you see how I could have said, well, that's not, if you give people too much choice, they won't choose anything. I said, because the intent was great. Right. And
sure,
so instead of saying, but, I said, and would it be okay if I suggested something? Because in my experience, when I give people a choice, they tend not to choose. So what you could do is listen for what would be the best way for them to enter, offer that. Then once you get the relationship, because you're right,
the top
people,
3
right.
items,
but the way that you guide people to that is not by telling them their idea is bad or they're doing it wrong, right? Because they feel it in their body, they go into instinct, and now they're not listening to anything.
Yeah.
So the wisdom just it's a gentle way. And it sounds like it could be, I don't know if it is or not, but it could be sounding like that sounds like a lot of work. Like, I invite you to consider it sounds kind of smarmy or cheesy. You can, I'm telling you,
people are counting on you. So it's not about telling them what to do, but they're counting on you to be the expert. So it's a balancing act.
It's really,
right? Yeah. And so it's when pitching, I often coach people to say, would you consider a gift? So after discussing and after finding their interest, the actual pitch isn't, will you donate? It's, would you consider a gift of X? And so similarly, it's inviting them to brainstorm with you as opposed
with me.
to,
right. And coming to their own decision about what they want to do. Right. Because that's all we're helping people do. And so I would say, I would love for you to consider this, and whatever you decide is totally okay.
Because it really is.
It is. And then the more power I give them to make the decision, the more likely are they're going to make the decision that I want them to.
Yeah.
Right. So
go ahead. Yeah. And I think it's about the audience, right? So, and then sometimes it's, listen, you've hired me as the expert here. This is what I recommend. But of course, decision making, same thing with donors. So it's listening, and then there gets a point where they want to know the offer. They want to know, they want to know the funding opportunity. And that's when you get into the, whatever we want to call it. But it's about listening, being ready, and doing your best to present the opportunity that's the best fit.
And I would say if you listen, people will tell you what they want. They'll tell you, like, when should I ask? They'll tell you when they're ready. That's right. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you listen to what they're saying, they'll tell you when they're ready. And it's because here's the rub of it. They're on their own. People aren't on your timeline. They're on their timeline. So one of the things, like, I remind myself this a lot. Okay. So there's my job and the universe's job. My job is to do my work, connect, like, do stuff like this with you, connect to my people, give good value. I don't get to decide who comes and when. That's the universe's job. Right. So because I can only do me. Right. And I can be present, and I can work hard, and I can do my best. But then I don't get, so when I think about, no, I don't, that's not my job. That's not my job.
Yeah.
But now if you say that to, like, leadership, I'm like, what do you mean that's not your job? You're like, but it's the truth. Okay. Because sometimes you polish a little here to shine a little here. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you put something out there and it comes back to you, but it's not in the way that you would expect or in the way that you would think. And so,
Definitely.
yeah. And that's the abundance piece of it is like, I know if I just do my work, like that consistent delivery, like what you're doing with your groups and all that consistent delivery, the money will come. It'll
Yeah.
just come. It'll come.
Yeah. And you won't have to force it. It will just come. It's a byproduct of that diligent, consistent, focused effort.
Yep.
Yeah. And I like this, the simplicity of it, right? Not to add too many things. I think you were saying earlier. What do you think is, and I kind of get a sense of where you would go, but I want to make sure that we're on the same page. What do you think is the something about the nonprofit industry that really does hold us back? Of course, not everybody, but what would you love to see change about our industry?
Well, I think that the word nonprofit messes with our head. So we're defined by what we're not instead of what we are. Right. And so here we're defined by who cares if we make a profit or not. That is totally not the point. You know what I mean? Like it. And so I use, and I'm happy to take nominations from the floor on this, but human investment company, like whatever language, because when we're defined by what we aren't, okay. So like we feel like we're down here. Okay. So I'm down here. And because I'm a nonprofit in our country, that we value a business based on its profit, right? So we already feel like, oh, and we don't sell stuff. And okay, all right. All right, so we already feel like we're at this disadvantage, and I just think it gives us a collective low self-esteem,
It's a collective low
so we feel
self-esteem.
like we have to be up here, we have to be extra shiny, extra special, extra good, extra product, just to be considered equal, right?
Sounds familiar.
So great. Well, that's my story, Amy. That's my story. Like literally that happened to me. Like I was in the therapist's office and this was many years ago. And she was like, I was talking about how somebody had criticized me and how upset I felt. And she was like, well, praise and criticism is the same thing. And I'm like, so that's stupid because one feels really good. One feels really bad. She goes, it's just other people's opinions of you. Right. And a person if a person's going to do anything in their life, they're going to need to managing, like somebody's going to criticize it. Right. And I was like, and in that moment, I was like, holy crap. And I realized that I was addicted to praise, right? Because I felt here. So I needed to be up here. And then I thought, oh my God, so are all my clients. We don't realize it. So what, wait, hold on. How can then, that's why I talk authentic, vulnerable, open, speaking the truth about it, because and I've seen it, especially in the staff board dynamics, staff's trying to polish things to shine a certain way. Then the board feels frustrated because they know it's not the real story. And they're like, just tell us the real story. But they don't feel like they have the space to do that. So because we have to be this, and our donors, so we create these expectations. So what I would want for our industry overall is to just value itself. Like you are a partner, you are worthy of investment. We have a hard time because we seeing our value as far as in an investment, you know what I mean? And we have a legit business model that works, that's very stable. And this is the data, right? And but our story is, we're a poor nonprofit that doesn't have any money. And if that's the story, that's what will continue to be true. And even if that nonprofit could look in their life and see, they'll say oh, we got to get the money. And then the money shows up. But because of the stories we never have any money, they focus on when they don't have money, and they tend not to focus on when they do have money. I'll just say, I was on a call with this woman the other day, and it was so beautiful. She said, Maryanne, I have this whole whiteboard in front of me, and of all the things I have to do, she's talking about the overwhelm, because that's our culture. It gets our nonprofit culture is the overwhelm, because we feel like we have to be here all the time. I said, sister, what if you did this? What if you put that to-do list on a notepad, right? And put it here, and everything you got done that day, you put on that whiteboard. So instead of going home and thinking about all the stuff that you didn't do on that board, you went home and celebrated everything you got done from that board.
It is pretty amazing.
How would that shift your thinking? How would that shift? Because it was just the story she was telling herself. Yeah. I'm not enough. I'm never enough. And I think
here's a news flash. You're never going to get through the list of things to do. And if you do, it's just never going to happen. I remember,
that's not the point.
I remember years ago, just coming to the conclusion, I'm going to get through 10% of this. So I better pick carefully.
Right.
Because
And
that's what's
I had
gonna
a
happen.
story that I didn't get a lot done in a day. And then one of my colleagues, like I'm part of a coaching group, and we would call each other and just leave voice notes on and say everything we did that day. And I did that for a couple of months, and it really made me, oh, I do get stuff done.
That's exactly right. 10% of the right moves is powerful.
That's it.
You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
that's it.
So just make sure it's the right focus.
So
and
and it's
less.
just celebrating what you did do, because that list will be there for you tomorrow, but here's what you did today.
Yeah.
And
no, it is. It's a reframing. And I think it is really important.
And
that's helpful to get a sense of where you think the industry, and that it really goes back to that confidence issue. Maryanne, our time is flying by. I'm curious, do you have a group or a way for folks to stay in touch and learn more about your mindset and your strategy combo approach, which is incredibly powerful?
So a couple of things. If you can go to the nonprofit marketing guide, or sorry, nonprofitleadershipguide.com. And I have an ebook called Stop Sitting Back and Start Making Change. It explores a lot of these things. And in there also is this really cool template. It's exactly like a script for how to like manage a conversation that's rooted in listening and valuing the person, and how to get somebody to see your idea without pitching or selling your idea.
Wonderful. What's the site again? You said nonprofit.
It's nonprofitleadershipguide.com.
Great.
And I'll just my email is Maryanne@MaryanneDersch.com. You can feel free to email me. And I am, I'm doing a workshop at the end of this month. So on, how to hear yes more often. So so if you download this guide, I'll have your email. And I'll make sure you get the info on that, or you can just shoot me an email and say you're interested, and I'll register you for this.
Download the guide. I posted it up here in the banner. I don't know if you can see that.
Right. And so it's at the end of this month. And I offer 2 sessions live, and we're going to go really specifically into techniques that you can use to get people to start closing deals, to release the ones that aren't working and start getting yeses from the ones that are, and knowing the difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's important stuff. I love that. I love that you put so much the steps and the structure to it to make it really exciting. So I've posted the nonprofitleadershipguide.com website. I know that we'll be posting in the comments other ways to stay in touch with you as well.
My podcast is The Influential Nonprofit, and I have awesome guests, just different nonprofit leaders that I like, experts. And then sometimes I come in, I just do a little bit of some of the philosophies and the strategies that I've been talking about today. So that's another way you can find me.
So it sounds like by getting this will give you information to Maryanne's book and podcast and other ways. Get in her universe.
You can be in my orbit.
I love it, Maryanne. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for sharing your wisdom today.
And I want to say, I quote you all the time, because you said they come for the cause, they stay for the community. And I've probably said that 100 times since the forum on people. And I credit you when I do it. And I think what you're doing is amazing, because again, there's not a lot of models or people that are saying, here's how you create community, right? Here's how you hold people together. And, so it's awesome.
I think that's what we have in common, right? These are different tools and tactics to do that. And how you show up is definitely the
how you show up. What you put out there is exactly what you're getting back. So
Maryanne, I can't wait to see what fun things we do together next.
Me too.
Good to see you.
I'm so glad I found I like her. I'm sending her a message.
I love it. And we became fast friends. It's true. And hey, happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yes.
Listen, can you tell us your St. Patrick's Day story real quick before we...
Yeah, I am Polish and Catholic. I'm Polish and German. I went to an Irish Catholic high school, and I deeply resented St. Patrick's Day because I was like, when is there St. Stanislaus Day? And so on St. Patrick's Day, we got to wear green. We had wear uniforms, of course, but in St. Patrick's Day, we got to wear green and gold. And I came with a shirt that said, "Sorry, we can't all be Polish." A red shirt with white letters that said, "Sorry, we can't all be Polish." And Sister Helen, our vice principal, sent me home for dress code violation.
For
My mom had to
anti-St.
come
Patrick's Day.
pick me up. And my parents didn't like. My parents kind of love. I feel like they thought it was really funny, but they couldn't really say it was funny. But
Right.
but they
But
were
they
like,
knew it would
my
give you
mom was like, "Are you kidding me?" Because my mom was the Polish one, so she
was mad. She had to come over.
She had to go get, and she was mad that it happened. And then she's like, "What? They can't." I'm sorry. My mom was of the same ilk. Well, yeah, we're Polish. We're awesome. So
yeah, we were saying, I think Italians too. It's we go to the St. Joseph's Day. I'm like, what the heck we're celebrating St. Joseph's Day just to have an Italian version of St.
For 9 years, I lived in a Polish Catholic, Irish Catholic neighborhood in St. Louis, and called Dogtown. They're actually having a big party like right now. The streets are filled with people. It's this sweet little neighborhood, and I had like, my kids are adopted, so I had these two little black kids in this Irish Catholic neighborhood, and my son, so my oldest, her name was Sir Patrick. She changed her name so when she was little, she would say, "Oh, Mom, they're having a party for me. It's Sir Patrick's Day." And I was like, absolutely. This is
all about you.
We're so happy you live here now. They're going to throw a parade.
Isn't that amazing? Listen, we're all Irish on St. Patrick's Day. I'm good with that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Hey, what I like to say is, I want to remind our nonprofit listeners, you're not lucky. You're a community building badass, and that's why all these good things are happening to you. So keep up the good work out there.
All right, guys.
Thanks, Maryanne.
Thank you.